Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for Ian for inviting me to speak. Thanks for Tara for, Uh, buckle in. I don't know how this is going to go because I had to cut a lot of content. We'll see. I'm also sick with a sinus infection and unmedicated, so let's go. Um, so before we get going, just a little content warning. I will be discussing mental health, workplace trauma briefly, a bit of ableism, and a little bit of PTSD. If those subjects are ones that you don't want to hear, feel free to exit the chat or step out. No worries there. A little introduction. I'm Shell Little. My gender pronouns are she, they. You can find me on Blue Sky, Shell E. Little. I am an independent senior accessibility specialist. I'm an inclusive design and game accessibility consultant, and I speak. People pay me to say words out loud. I talk about disability, cognitive accessibility. I do accessible design, game design. I live in Seattle. I'm partnered, and all my kids have tails. So I like to do a little bit of a roadmap. So for today, we're going to start with an intro, moving into burnout. Then we'll do pipeline, and then the bulk of the content. On the other screen. This computer's a beast.
What we call it, actually.
Yeah, the beast. Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, anyway, the bulk of the content will be in prevention, and then we'll move into a conclusion. So I would say items 1, 2, 3 are predominantly in the first third, and then item number 4 is just a little bit past the halfway mark. Okay, intro. So to start off, I want to say that workplace trauma is real and your feelings are valid. So long-term workplace trauma is another recognized condition and can lead to and can cause PTSD. Individuals may be subject to extreme levels of pressure, stress, or discrimination on a daily basis for years and realize they are suffering from the, okay. Here, let's just take it. Let's take it and make it not. It won't be as pretty, but it'll be functional. So go to the exit full screen. Yeah. That's okay. I'm just a guy with a mic. That's okay. Actually, Tara, you need to stay there the whole time now. My emotional support, Tara. We good? Yeah, it won't be as pretty, but maybe it'll advance. Okay. Blame Google. All right. Continuing on, individuals may be subject to extreme levels of pressure, stress, or discrimination on a daily basis for years and realize they are suffering from the condition after many years of exposure. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise that workplace trauma is not real. Your job shouldn't make you feel like shit, and that shouldn't be something radical to say. So why this talk? So the work that we do is too important to lose more people to burnout, which we are losing people to burnout, and it is a big problem. So the more that I spoke about my own personal burnout with accessibility work, the more I realized that I wasn't alone. And not only are we losing senior leadership to burnout, but we're also losing the generation of people that will then fill that gap. So the problem is that 5, 10 years from now, the people who would have moved into those senior roles aren't there anymore. So we're filling those roles with people who aren't qualified or have never worked in accessibility. And for people who have to work with, potentially skip managers or higher ups that have never worked in accessibility, you know how difficult that can be. I have a tweet on the screen right now from Eric Eggert, and it says, and if we can afford one thing, or if we cannot afford one thing, that's people quitting accessibility because they are burnt out, because they feel that they are ineffective and their work is worthless. I feel that all the time. So if you are feeling that way sometimes at work, you are not alone. So let's talk about burnout. What burnout is. So burnout is, according to Mayo Clinic, it is a special type of work-related stress, a state of physical or emotional exhaustion that involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. But what work burnout is not. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal story. So like many of you, I worked a corporate job in accessibility. I was the head of inclusive design at a Fortune 500 company. And I was overworked, under-resourced. And we all tend to accept this mountain of tech debt when we start an accessibility job. On the screen right now, I have screenshots of Microsoft Calendar, and I'm quadruple booked. It's a problem, and it was a really big deal. So Due to my job, I developed a panic disorder. So my body lost the ability to tell the difference between life-threatening stress and normal stress. But then I also lost the ability to care for myself. I lost the ability to make simple decisions. And then I was also stuck in a state of fight or flight for multiple years. Twilight meme on the screen. So when I quit my job, I opened up my own company and started being my own boss, but things didn't get better after leaving my 9 to 5. And I was still having panic attacks and I still wasn't really able to do most things. So we were like, oh, no worries. I have panic disorder and just really spicy work burnout. Wrong. I actually had autistic burnout. It is a very specific type of burnout that can look like work burnout if you don't know what you're looking for. And because there are so many autistic people who work in the game accessibility field, I wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about what is burnout and what is autistic burnout. You can also think of it as neurodivergent burnout, but the hard thing is neurodivergent doesn't just mean ADHD and autism. There's also a lot of other types of disabilities that fit into neurodivergent. So just know when I'm talking about autistic burnout, it can on some levels apply to ADHD as well. So work burnout is chronic stress from work alone, triggered by chronic work stress, like high workload, reduced accomplishments, and value misalignment. But autistic burnout is burnout from chronic life stress and inadequate support for autistic people, triggered by chronic stress from sensory overload, social demands, masking, and unmet needs. Work burnout results in worse performance, depleted energy, low work morale, and languish, and it doesn't affect you outside of the work as deeply. But autistic burnout results in chronic exhaustion, less tolerance to stimuli, loss of function, skill regression, nervous system dysfunction, and it's more pervasive and more intense, and it's more difficult to heal from. So if you find yourself being like, this isn't just work, it's bleeding into outside of work, or if you have a coworker where it's bleeding into outside of work, where you're worried, like, my coworker's not feeding themselves anymore. These could be some really important telltale signs for autistic burnout. So for work burnout, it's healed by pulling back at the job crafting, aligning your values, and receiving increased support. And it requires turning outward to heal, looking for resources outward. But for autistic burnout, it's healed by embracing unmasking, learning your needs, therapy, and having a diverse sensory diet. And it requires turning inward. So they're healed opposite. So if you're trying to heal autistic burnout by trying to heal work burnout, you're not going anywhere. So those are just some important things to think about. And if you have autism and ADHD, it could be both. Yay! Yay! We're the worst lottery. But why is it so bad in general? Why is burnout so bad? Well, the system is working as designed. So systemic issues that lead to burnout are grind culture, late stage capitalism, lack of workers' rights, white supremacy, and patriarchy. Unfortunately, those are the systems of oppression that we live under, and they are purposely made to exploit our labor. So we're all not doing well right now because the systems are working as designed. So let's talk about the burnout pipeline. So why are accessibility professionals specifically at a higher risk for burning out? And again, we've kind of switched gears back to work burnout. I just wanted to get my PSA out there. So burnout factors, they disproportionately affect accessibility specialists because when you look at the list of burnout factors, the worst ones are just part of the job. So let's talk about a few of those. So one of the factors is lack of control, an inability to influence decisions that affect your job, such as your schedule, assignments, or workload. Does anybody feel like that? I know I did. So large company, for a great example is large companies firing their entire QA department, moving to third party. So now you lost access to your QA department because now they're third party and they're strangers and they're not people who work in your office anymore. I don't know if anybody who works for any companies know what that feels like. Not pointing any fingers. But yeah, so lack of control can be a really big problem. Sense of futility or hopelessness can be a really big issue when it comes to burnout. And this feels like nothing you're doing is making a difference at your job, and the efforts you're putting in are disproportionate to the outcomes. So fighting uphill constantly to even get one small feature in just for it to not make the push, just to get told, oh, it'll be in the next fast follow. Like that is brutal and part of the job. Another factor is unclear and changing job expectations. So Lacking solid understanding of the scope of your role should take a constant shifting of what your priorities should be by leadership. So kind of feeling like you're getting pulled left and right. And for those of you where accessibility is a facet of your job, but maybe not your core functionality, probably feel that a lot, where technically accessibility is not really your full-time job. So if you don't say yes, like you just kind of get pulled around and it's not really clear what's in scope and what's not in scope. And I've heard of people getting scolded for pointing out accessibility issues because people are like, well, that's not your fault. Like that's not your place to say those things, even though you were told that accessibility is part of your job. So, it's very common. Next up is unreasonable and increasing workload. So a feeling of insecurity with how much work you're doing versus what is expected and what is reasonable. So that's something like being added to projects and that are clearly outside the scope of your work, but there's no other accessibility person to step in. So if you don't do it, who will? And then unfortunately, you just got another project added on top of the pile. And finally, having a seat or having to fight for a seat at the table. I know I personally have had to fight for the seat at the table, and it sucks. So the feeling of having to self-advocate for not only your role, but the reason to be there with not only management, but also your coworkers as well, where they're like, well, how important is accessibility anyway? Can't we just wait to get sued? Do blind people even use phones? Just things like that I never want to hear again. So I know I'm not the only one who's been stuck in that never-ending buy-in loop where you're just like an advocacy bot at that point. And I know it's hard. So those are just generic factors of burnout, and they are really rooted in what it's like to be an accessibility specialist. So next up is company wellness programs. Like we have these company wellness programs, but do they really work? Spoilers, they don't. So like these programs that there's like, oh, just do our wellness app or just do mindfulness or just do blah, blah, blah. We know now after 4 years of research, these do not work. So 4 of the main factors on why these company initiatives don't work is 1, they overlook the root issues. 2, they could be seen as hypocritical. 3, they aren't widely used. And 4, they aren't effective. So to highlight 2 of these points, they overlook the root issue. These programs can ignore the systemic issue. And this can result in what's called care washing, or using superficial care programs that fail to tackle the actual causes of stress, i.e. workload. Go do your 5-minute mindfulness exercise and then come back to your incredibly debilitating workload. Like that doesn't do anything. It's not helpful. And then that's where it feels hypocritical. You're being told, oh, just go talk to this therapist for 5 minutes because that's all we've allotted, and then you'll be cured, or take a vacation. But that doesn't change the fact that when you get back to work, your workload is the same. So those root issues are not being addressed. And they also aren't effective. Science, an Oxford study, it studied 46,000 workers in 233 different organizations, and they compared the employees who engaged with these workplace well-being programs to those who did not. And after a year of research, they found that the people who used the programs were no better off. Like there was no evidence to prove that these programs had done anything. So it's not your fault if you're engaging in these programs being told by your higher ups, this will make it better. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault these programs don't make a difference. So if you have any guilt or shame about, oh, I really need to do that thing that it probably won't work, and it's not your fault. So when we boil it down, burnout really is caused by increasing job demands, lack of resources, and the misalignment of values. And there are some things you can do with some of these. Obviously, you can't like wave a magic wand and get 5 more coworkers, but there are some things that you can do. So one big thing is we need to move away from an individual frame, like take vacation, go to therapy, and to a systemic frame where it's, we need to change the systems. We need to change how meetings are held. We need to change 4-day work weeks, things like that. We need some radical change in order to stop people burning out. So just know that, there's a lot of systems in place and it's not your fault. Great. Moving on to prevention. So I'm going to introduce a lot of concepts here, and I don't have time to go into all of them, but what I hope this will be is a launching off point for you to potentially look into these different concepts more. All the concepts I'm about to list off they're the most recent research. They are the a special interest of mine is burnout, obviously. So these are the things that they're coming back with positive results. So again, can't do it all, but hopefully maybe one of these resonates with you, and maybe you can hit, DuckDuckGo, hit Google with it, and see what you find. So um, all the stuff I've said so far, I do not say this to discourage people from doing accessibility. I'm just trying to state the reality of where we are, because not enough people are talking about how we're not doing okay, because a lot of us aren't doing okay, and you're not alone. And that's a very powerful statement, because I gave a presentation at A11YTO a couple years ago, and I gave this like really elaborate presentation about how to hire inclusive designers, but I mentioned burnout in it. And afterwards, not a single person came up to me about my like really cool tool I built. Everybody was like, let's talk about burnout. And I was like, okay, clearly I'm not the only person who's, struggling with this stuff. So I don't say this to discourage you at all. It's not the actual work that we do. It's not the accessibility work. It's the environment which we're forced to do the work that's the problem. So let's do what we can to adapt the environment to make accessibility more sustainable. So first off is boundary setting. Um, when you're driving straight at a wall, the first thing you can do is pump the brakes. So boundary setting is a great way to pump the brakes. So first off, reevaluate your relationship with work, something that I wish someone would have said to me like 3 years ago. So are you giving more than is reasonable to your job? Asking yourself that question. Do you have things outside of your career that bring you joy? Because I didn't. I was a full-time speaker and a full-time employee. And if I wasn't doing that, I was writing talks for friends and editing articles. And accessibility was everything. And when I quit my job, I was like, I don't have hobbies. What do I do for fun? And no one should get to that point. Next up is your job your main source of stress? Like, is your job the only pain point in your life? Everything else is great, but the stress from your job is bleeding into your marriage, bleeding into your relationship with your children, bleeding into keeping you away from your hobbies. Reevaluate those things. So another great thing that has been proven to help people pump the brakes, so to say, is boundary statements. So for example, I'm excited for this new task. What on my current workload would you like me to deprioritize to accommodate this new project? This task is outside of my knowledge and current job description, but I would love to advocate for a new team member to handle this responsibility. And finally, disengage and detach from work. Now, I'm not saying the concept of care less at your job is a values issue. You can't just care less. That's like, don't care about disabled people as much. Like that's not a possibility, And it's something that I used to feel, but I'm like, it's a values thing. You can't just change your values. So a great way to not, disengage or not care less at work is the concept of disengaging. So having a solid routine for connection from when you start work, but then having a solid disconnection plan. What do you do routinely after work to tell your body you are no longer being chased by the tiger? We go for a walk. You have to tell your nervous system, hey, I know you think we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger right now, but we're actually not. Now it's rest and digest time. So we go for a walk every day. What do you do every day? Do you journal? Do you read? Do you cook? Do you sing? What do you do after work every day to disengage? Create barriers for outcomes of the whole company / greater team versus your role, i.e. your job. Your job is to find accessibility issues, maybe not necessarily fix accessibility issues. So putting buffers, knowing my job is to find accessibility errors. And if that doesn't get fixed, that's not my fault or my problem, is a really important mindset shift, because when it's out of your control and you can't do anything about it, it will break you down. Having emotional boundaries around things or people you do not have control over is another really big disengage tactic. And then finally, strict boundaries around outside of work hours, access, and communication. I don't know if that's a huge thing for everybody, but making sure you're saying, I'm available 9 to 5. Do not message me after. If you do, you will not hear from me. Those kinds of things studies have shown have really helped people disengage. So anyway, anybody who says quiet quitting is bad either wants to benefit from your exploited labor, or they don't understand that their labor is being exploited. All right, workplace well-being. The Surgeon General of America came out with a 48-page, check it out if you want to, 48-page, essentials for workplace mental health and well-being. It's actually really well done. And if every company were to adopt it, the world would be a better place. So on the screen right now, I have an infographic from it. I don't have time to go through all of it, but the major concepts are protect from harm, connection and community, work-life harmony, not work-life balance, because that's not a thing, work-life harmony, mattering at work, and opportunities for growth. These are the 5 major core factors that all feed into worker voice and equity. So my challenge to you is make a list of each well-being component and how much of your job aligns with those components and what part of your job does not align. And if you have a checklist where you've got 2 items and 50 items, maybe it's time to reevaluate some stuff about your role. If you need time to rest and reset and think about your priorities, check out FMLA. That's family medical leave. I took 2. That was a great way for me to pump the brakes. Not everybody's eligible for them. There's some hoops you have to jump through. But if you're like, I have to quit my job, I'm going to, set my hair on fire, or I need to take a break, check out FMLA. And finally, who knows? I don't know, my own deck. So value alignment, this is a really important piece. So values, the majority of burnout is caused by a misalignment of your values and your role or work environment's values. So knowing your values allows you to view your career as something that's running alongside your life rather than being your entire life. So let's talk with some examples. So what are your workplace values? Helping, teaching, collaborating, growth. You can go online and look up workplace values. Find the values that work for you. Like what do you prioritize? What matters to you at your workplace? Is it honesty, transparency? Is it efficiency? I love efficiency. Give me a system, I'll fix it. But if you're working in a company that isn't aligned in your values, maybe they don't like changing things. Maybe they only like to, keep systems as they are because that's how we've always done it. Maybe you are working with a company that doesn't align with your values. Maybe your manager doesn't align with your values. Finding out where those pain points are can really help you focus in on where the struggles are coming from, because this is what they call the friction. This is where the friction happens in your job that does end up causing burnout. So digging into the why of a values misalignment. So are we short-staffed because we're filling a role right now, or because our management prioritizes profit over people? Figuring out that why can be really important. So getting clear on where the misalignments are, you can find out if you can change these things, if you can get help to change them, or if it's time to go. It's a great way to evaluate what's going on with your role. All right. The last one I know for this time, job crafting. Job crafting is really cool. There's a lot of research. It's been around since like 2007. It sounds hokey, but I realized as a neurodivergent person, I was job crafting at my own role. It was more, I was told I shouldn't go to those meetings anymore because I made people sad, but that's because I'm not nice sometimes to people who are bad at accessibility and are mean. But that's a me thing. So job crafting in general is a process where you can proactively design your role to better align with your needs. Align with your needs, interests, and your skills. So it's a bottom-up approach that involves an employee shaping your own work rather than waiting for a manager to design it for you. So who are you? What are the things that matter to you at work? What are your different tasks at work? What does your job look like? Because that's what a job is. A job is a bunch of different tasks and relationships. So do an overview of your job. What parts of your job energize you? What parts of your job stress you out? Can those elements be changed, offloaded? Maybe you have a coworker that loves the stuff that you absolutely hate. Can it be done during a one-on-one? Can it be done during body doubling sessions? Can you work with your manager to craft a better role for you? I found that even though I had a rigid role, I was able to do a lot of job crafting. Certain meetings didn't work well for my brain. Certain tasks were really difficult for me, and I had a really hard time doing them. So we were able to tweak them and find ways to maybe do less of. And a great way to job craft forcibly is to ask for accommodations. So anxiety, depression, mental health related disabilities are disabilities, and they are covered under the ADA. So a great resource is askjan.org. It is the Job Accommodation Network. You have rights as a person who has anxiety, has depression. If you have ADHD or autism, there are accommodations. Did you know that the way your manager delivers news to you can be an accommodation? Your manager could once a week have to give you positive feedback to help with anxiety. That can be a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. I highly recommend you check out Ask Jan. There are things I wish I would have known when I was working full time. While it may not be possible to craft your way out of every bad aspect of your job, is it possible to maybe minimize your misalignments and stressors? Even 5% better is a lot better. If you walked up to any CEO and said, we can make you 5% more money, no one's going to snuff at that. If you can make your job 5% better, that's better than nothing. Awesome. Conclusion. Okay. If you are feeling burnt out in your job, know that you are not alone. You are not at fault for the way you're feeling. The system is working as designed. The work you are doing can be difficult, stressful, and overwhelming, but never lose sight of the why and the who. We work for disabled people. We work towards access. We are working for real people with real needs. 4, the work you do is important, but so is your own well-being. I know the phrase, put your own mask on first, is very important. If you are drowning, you cannot save others. You must save yourself first. 5, there are resources available to you in order to slow or mitigate burnout. Take advantage of them. They sound kind of hokey and they sound kind of like, fluffy, but I promise you, research is backing them that they do make a difference and they do pump the brakes, so to say. If you're interested in more from me, you can visit my website, shellelittle.com. Eventually, trademark, I will have online classes, one-on-one mentorship, and I do private speaking continuously here and there. So I have a little mailer thing. It's going to me. There is no spam. I don't have the patience to spam people. So if you want to give me your email address and check the boxes appropriately, I will let you know when I have things out. Additional resources: Burnout, the Secret to Unlocking Stress Cycle, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, The Catalyst Guide to Working Well, and The Grind Detox. All great books I highly recommend. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.